We're back with another episode of Franchise My Business, the podcast for franchisors, hosted by franchisors. I'm your host, Kevin Oldham, and it's Thursday, which means that we have a guest interview. And it's pretty cool when you come across people that basically were almost born into the franchise industry. It's like all that they've ever known. And I think a lot of people have probably heard of United Franchise Group. They are an organization that holds owns many top brands in the franchise space. And I feel blessed to have one of the founder's son on the phone today, right? Like, this is super, super cool. So Austin Titus, without further ado, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Yeah, man. I mean, I want to talk about what it was like growing up in a family of franchisors. Like, that's got to be a pretty cool worldview to be grown into in terms of a business perspective. Yeah.
It's been really, really unique. And obviously when you're growing up as a kid and kind of living through it, you don't realize it until you're a bit older and you start talking to, people in college and they're like, what are you saying? Like, what do you mean referencing franchise? Because nobody knows what franchising is outside of the franchising industry. They just think it's, McDonald's and think it's like the fast food restaurants that they see all around. And so, I did naturally know a lot more about franchising at a younger age than most people would, just because of the kind of conversations we had around the dinner table and just always being a part of this in some way, shape, or form.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure that work probably, trickled over to the dinner table. We try to avoid that in our family, but it does happen. And, when it does happen, I'm always like, well, you know what? My kids are getting an education in business right now. They may not be listening. They may not understand it, but when they get older, they'll probably remember it in one way or another, like you are right now, which is kind of cool. Make those imprints.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Definitely.
So let's dive in, because I have known about United Franchise Group for a long time, but some people may not know. Why don't we just talk about the brands that are in your guys' portfolio real quick? Just rattle them off. And then I know you specifically want to talk about FranVestCo and some of the other things. So, but let's just give the highlights so people know what are the holdings that you guys have under management?
Yeah. So you've got United Franchise Group at the top, and I'll kind of explain the structure here. We recently announced the restructuring of the company, where we've added the conglomerate called StarPoint Brands. Okay. And so United Franchise Group is the parent company, and under United Franchise Group, we have franchise services and we have franchise brands. And so the franchise services themselves would be, for example, Accurate Franchising, where we help turn businesses into franchises. FranVestCo, which we invest in franchise companies and help them grow. We have some extended support services for franchisors, for emerging franchisors and established franchisors. And then we have StarPoint Brands, which is mostly what I've been involved in my career. It's the franchise brands that we own and operate the majority stake of. Okay. And so those brands, the StarPoint Brands, consist of companies like Signarama, where we have over 800 locations, fully promoted, which we have a couple hundred locations. I think it's close to 250, between 250 and 300 locations. Transworld Business Advisors, which is a business brokerage and franchise consulting company. A couple of food brands with the Great Greek Mediterranean Grill and the Gray's Craze, which have been doing really, really great. We have Network Lead Exchange, which is a business networking and business referral franchise. And I am the president of Network Lead Exchange as well. That is one of my roles with United Franchise Group. And so there's a lot of brands that we've been, affiliated with over the years. We've also sold brands. We recently had started our co-working division, which is under StarPoint Brands as well, with Venture X, which is a co-working space, and Office Evolution, which was a recent acquisition of ours. So 2 co-working spaces as well within the StarPoint Brands. I think I got them all.
Yeah, I think you did too. I was kind of going mentally. I'm like, all right, you forgot the co-working brands there. You circle back. So I think you closed the loop. So you guys have what's kind of cool is you've got, particularly as I look at like the benefits of networking, referrals, and things like that, tying into or maybe feeding into some of your other brands like, VentureX and Office Evolution. So you have some pretty cool synergies there.
Yeah. I mean, the core of our business has always been B2B. And so you can kind of see it in the order that I started listing them off. Sinorama, that's the company that my dad started in 1986. And then he started Embroid Me in 2000, and that turned into Fully Promoted. And so that was signs, graphics, wraps, and then promotional products, embroidery, screen printing. And so there was a lot of synergies there. And then Transworld Business Advisors, which is business brokerage, help buy and sell businesses, lots of business owners, all interactions with business owners, B2B. And then, Network Lead Exchange was a really good tie in there as well, because we've been, all of our franchisees have been part of, those other networking groups, BNI, other groups, Chamber of Commerce, and it was a really good tie in there.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. How at your guys' headquarters, how many people, like how many support staff are there to support all these brands?
Yeah, there's about 100 employees here at the office in West Palm Beach. We also have, want to say 30-ish employees that are stationed through the country. And we have an office in Australia as well.
Oh, okay, cool. Why do you have an office in Australia?
So we sell direct in Australia. Every other country, we sell master licenses. But we have our own support staff and our own direct franchise owners in Australia. And everywhere else, we do master licenses.
Nice. Love it. So let's talk about, it says 1,600 locations, 60 plus countries. I mean, you guys have a big ship to steer. But I know that you really wanted to dive into some of the things that you guys are doing with FranVestCo. So let's just walk through that door right now. What the heck is FranVestCo, and why are you guys doing it?
Yeah, so it's a business where we help emerging franchise companies grow to the next level. And in exchange for our franchise development support services, we help them sell franchises. We help them get organized, help them come up with systems and processes. And instead of going out there and paying a company to do all that for you, we do it in exchange of equity or exit commission.
Beautiful.
And so we kind of do it on a case-by-case basis. It's not something that's kind of available out there to everybody.
Right. Nor should it be.
There's limited resources here. And, we do want to focus in on a good handful of companies. And it's something that kind of I've taken the lead of and pushing out there.
How long you guys been going down this path?
It's been a couple years. But just recently we've been, fully, getting engaged with it. We've had a couple of clients, but, over the last 12 months, we've taken it to about, it's 6 clients now that we have with FranVestCo.
Kind of incubating them, right? I mean, it's really, I was a partner at a business incubator and accelerator. We took in, X amount of companies per year. We had a framework we pushed them through, and we did that for 5% non-dilutable equity in their business, right? I love that because you guys are kind of putting, I'm a big skin in the game type of person from a business perspective. If you're vested, you're vested. If you're not, you're not. This is a pretty good way to separate people who are serious. Yeah. But also, I imagine it's a hell of a lot of fun because you get to reach people at those formative stages when they do need mentorship, when they don't necessarily know what to do. And maybe they can't afford, or should they hire a franchise consultant or whatever the resources, or a marketing company or whatever it is, it can add up. It can add up. And that may not be the best path for some people.
Definitely. And we also have done this with companies that, may be a little bit more established in another country and they want to bring it to the US.
Oh, and as a way to expand in the US. A trusted guide to help through that process.
Exactly.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome.
So,
So what's the smallest, you've got 6 companies you kind of got in this, in FranVestCo. What's the smallest, if somebody's listening and they're, an emerging franchise, or they're just small, And they're like, hey, is this for me? Like, is there a minimum? Is it more about like the brand and the founders and the operators? Or is it more about where they are in their journey? Like what, without sharing your secret sauce, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you guys make those no-go decisions?
Look, this is easy because there really isn't a secret sauce that we have that I could share, but we have partners in FranVestCo that literally have one location. So it's a situational thing. It's, do we get along with the owners? Are the numbers good? Do we see this as, a niche business that we can really get involved in? And most importantly, do we see this as a business that our help is going to easily take it to the next level?
Right.
Right. Because that's not for everybody. If someone came to me with some type of niche that we don't know anything about and we were, unsure of the industry, we're probably not the best partners. They could be saying they're making, ridiculous profits, but that doesn't matter. It has to be a good fit.
Yeah. Yeah. If it doesn't stack up to the expertise that you guys have established, the team members there, the support team that's helping all these franchisees be successful. Yeah. That makes sense to me. What was your first job in franchising? Were you in high school, college? Was it after? Like, when did you go from being in a franchise family to being like in business in the franchise world?
Yeah. So I've only ever had one job outside of United Franchise Group's umbrella. Yeah. So I was a kids counselor for an English teaching school for foreign kids, and I got fired. And so I did that one summer, and I did it for a summer in college. Okay. And so I worked at UFG summers in high school. I worked at UFG summers in college, and right out of school, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. But my first job I did like janitorial work when I was in high school, but
we all had those jobs, right?
And so, would clean the windows, I always brag, the stop sign that's in our parking lot. I actually put that in when I was
championed it. You actually installed it.
I did, with the concrete and everything, when I was 15 years old. And so me and my
Is it still standing, or is it needed work? It still looks good.
It's still standing. Made it through a few hurricanes.
Attaboy. That's awesome.
It's still standing. So I brag about that. That was my job. I put the stop sign in. Me and my other high school buddy, we were 15 years old. But my first real, in franchising job was in franchise development. Okay. And that's kind of where my career started in franchise sales. And so almost anything that I've done in regards to franchising has been somewhere in franchise development, franchise sales, building and growing emerging franchise brands. Yep. So I can walk you through that process here. So I started in franchise development, doing just, entry-level sales. I was 18 and I would make phone calls, was doing qualifier phone calls for our, VPs that were the ones closing the deals. Did that for a little bit of time, did that kind of through college, that type of stuff. When I finished up school, I went back to doing that, but kind of doing some mid-level franchise sales stuff. Eventually was running our franchise development department. And so I ran the franchise development department for United Franchise Group for about 3 years. And so I was managing the franchise development budget for all of our brands. And that was a pretty big moving piece there, and managing about 10 salespeople. And, that spun into me being the president of our emerging brands division. And the emerging brands division was basically every brand that United Franchise Group owned that had less than 20 franchises. Okay. And our goal was to get that brand up to about 50 locations. And then we would plug it into one of the divisions at UFG.
Yeah.
Did that for about 3 years. And one of those brands was Network Lead Exchange. And I fell in love with that brand. And when we were ready to kind of plug it into its own division, I wanted to be the president. Yeah. And so I kind of took that one over, ran Network Lead Exchange, and have been running Network Lead Exchange for the last 3.5 years.
Awesome. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. I want to learn a little bit more about Network Lead Exchange because you're right. Like BNI, some of these other solutions, sometimes people extract all the value they can out of them or whatever. And it sounds like I've got a friend who has an independent group here called Referral Madness, and he's, expanded to different chapters in Kansas City. It's not franchise, but I see what has happened to, he's actually, his office is in the same building. He's in this, he's at the center point of all these intersections. He's the reason that commerce is happening here in Kansas City, and that deals are happening between people he didn't know. Yeah. And I've got to think, man, that's a really cool franchise to own. If you're somebody who likes to be of service to people, but furthermore, if you're like a connector, like you get joy and energy. Like I get that. If I can help somebody out, I love it. My clients are mostly people that text me, which is funny, but they'll be like, hey, do you have a guy for fill in the blank? It could be garage door. It could be whatever. Hey, you've got a lawn guy, because they know that I see a lot of people that are good and bad. And then I hire the good ones, and then I test them, and I have high standards. And it's like, okay, cool. I felt good being able to connect you to that person. I got nothing from it. It would be cool to be compensated for it. And Network Lead Exchange franchise owners get compensated for that by owning the business. Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely a unique place in the networking world. With Network it really Lead Exchange. That's awesome. So what we did is we did the kind of the traditional BNI style structure where it's one person per profession. Mm-hmm. And that's really where the similarities end. It's one person per profession. It is exclusive to profession. And then the meetings are flexible. And so we don't have a very strict and rigid schedule when it comes to meetings. Some of the meetings are virtual, some are online. Some of them are happy hours. Some of them are breakfast events. Very, very flexible. Yeah. The franchise owners, they host 24 meetings a year. And so at least 2 meetings a month. Mm-hmm. And nobody gets kicked out of the meeting. Nobody gets kicked out of the group if they miss a meeting or anything like that. They don't have minimum requirements. Quotas to meet up with people, or they don't have a minimum amount of leads that they have to send and that type of stuff. And look, no knock on BNI, because what they do obviously works. They've got tens of thousands of groups. And so they're wildly successful. The type of person that we're looking for is different. It's somebody that's, a traveling person, or, we have people that will get on a meeting from their van, because they're a general contractor, and you wouldn't be able to survive doing that in BNI. You'd get kicked out. Yeah. So, yeah, no, I've heard about some of those things. And I think even my friends group is that way. It's like, you've got a commitment, because I remember he talked to me about being one of like the founding members. I'm like, I can't guarantee I'm going to be there every Wednesday at fill in the blank. Like my life isn't that flexible sometimes. Right. Like, so that's really cool. You guys taking a different approach to it. I love what you're doing in co-working, by the way. Co-working is huge and continues to grow. I think that and I'd be curious as to what you guys are seeing, but I think that obviously the workforce has changed dynamically, like ridiculous amounts of change. I think that some people are still trying to figure out, if I use my wife as an example, she's still working in a basement for a corporate employer, but she wished she could get out of the basement. Heck yes. And I think as maybe like more employees start looking at things, people who thought these co-working spaces were for startups and the techie guys and all that, they're starting to realize, no, like I can be my insurance and one person insurance company, which I think is one of the biggest users of co-working spaces, by the way. Yeah. I think that's one of the biggest. Yeah, it is. It's huge. And you can go fit in and have a tribe of people that you hang out with. And so you're not like, you have socialization and collisions and cool things happening. So co-working has taken off, and it was one of those things that, obviously COVID impacted businesses all different ways, but it was one of those businesses where when COVID hit, it had a little dip, but after that little dip, it just had an eruption because of all the people that were working from home, because everybody was forced to work from home. And then within a few months, everybody was still forced to work from home, but didn't want to work from home. Right. And so people kind of found that happy medium where even full teams now, say you were a small business in, West Palm Beach, Florida, and you had an office,
maybe you had an office building that you were renting for 5 or 6 employees or 10 employees even. You know, when you were forced to make all those people work from home because of COVID, when COVID was kind of fizzling out a little bit, they were like, well, maybe we should just get a co-working space. We can save on rent because we're paying X amount in rent. We can pay 1/4 of it or half of that in a co-working space. We can still give our employees flexibility. They have a place to go. They could still work from home a little bit, but we can meet up here. And so that middle ground erupted with small, medium-sized businesses. Yeah. So that's what we saw with co-working, and it's been growing like crazy.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, it's here to stay, and it's a cool business model. I think just because of the socialization aspect. When you're a solopreneur or you're a small business owner, it can be very, very isolating. And I'm not talking about mentally, like I'm talking about like physically sometimes too. People hole up in their basement, and it's like, that's maybe not healthy for some people. Some people, that's absolutely where they thrive. You know, some people need a change of pace. You know, hey, a couple days here, a couple days there. Let's talk about, you know, our audience is a lot of people that are either thinking about franchising or they are in that emerging phase, which, you know, I always kind of identify as under 40 or 50 units. If somebody's sitting there with a business, and I always use the bakery, but, you know, fill in the blank business, don't care what it is. You know, thinking about franchising. What do you think is the most valuable piece of advice that you would give them that maybe, you know, I know what mine is. Let me put it that way, and I'll share mine later. I talk about it a lot, but is there something that you can think of that would be the biggest like unlock for them that could help them collapse time or save some capital or anything? Or maybe you can tell them, hey, this isn't for me and I shouldn't do this, right? Because not every business should.
Agreed. So you're asking business that wants to become a franchise.
Yep. Okay. If you had one piece of counsel, one pearl of wisdom that you could share with them. Yeah.
I mean, what you just said is 100% true. Not every business should franchise. You have to have, you know, systems and processes, or at least have the structure where you can create those systems and processes. And, you know, preferably, you know, people will say, and people disagree with me when I say this, but you don't have to be a super niche business. You don't. You know, there's plenty of room for success for the next Subway out there. You know, it's not like that market is 100% dominated and it's impossible to succeed. If you have a really good product or a really good service and you have some experience in doing it just outside of your market, it doesn't have to be a ridiculous amount. You don't have to do it in a different state or, you know, across your state. Just a little bit of experience just outside of your niche market. It could be franchised. But the thing is not everybody's vision of franchise has to be, you know, to the moon. And so I know a lot of franchisors that have 25 to 50 franchisees, and they're extremely happy. They run their business. They own their own territory, of course, and they do that. And they also support these other franchisees who also do really well, and they're going quality over quantity. And then some franchisors play the numbers game, and they get quality with quantity. And so you go out there and you sell 200 franchises, and you figure it out. And a lot of companies do that too. I don't think there's anything wrong either way. It's just different strategies. And so,
I mean, I think, if we talk about hustle culture in the United States, it's all about, hey, let's go to the moon and all this stuff. And if you're not putting up ridiculous points, you're points on the board, you're not winning. And you're right. Like, you can have a really phenomenal business with 25 units, 50 units, and provide for your family, and moreover, provide for those business owners that you come in and serve every single day. And that's a noble cause, in my opinion. Like, to come in and help entrepreneurs in their local communities get what they want and be of service to others, and just being able to be part of that process is like it's an honor, right? It's like, oh, wow, we get paid to do this. This is really, really cool. Like, we built something that people want, and they want to put their capital and their lives into it. Holy smokes, that's awesome. It's really, really awesome. Really awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I have a client, a franchisor client of mine that they're located in Massachusetts in the Boston area. And they run a very small niche business. They're franchising. And, he told me, he's like, look, I just want to grow a handful of franchise owners. He's like, I think I got a great idea and a great business model, and, people can work for themselves. And his franchise model is, basically his franchisees are certain types of mechanics.
Right.
And they're just doing what they would normally do, but now they kind of own their own business doing it. And so he wants to improve the lives of mechanics in his area. And I think he's got a fantastic model, and he's going to do extremely well. And he doesn't want to shoot for the stars. He just wants to grow in his area. He's like, I want them to all be within a, 30-mile radius of me so that I can, go help them if they need help. And
that's super cool.
Yeah.
That is super cool.
And look, his mind might change one day as he's scaling it. He might say, hey, look, maybe we can go to the moon here. But right now, he loves his business he's in. He's doing well. And he just wants to kind of expand it that way through the franchise model.
One of my favorite parts, like my last group of companies, we were smaller than you, but we had, 3 franchise brands under management or that we owned. I liked our United Real Estate when we launched it, when we had our first convention, and I think we maybe had 25 franchisees or something. It was very, very small, but I actually liked that because I got to know every single one of those franchisees at not just a surface level, not orientation week level, like at a deep level, because every single location in those formative stages was so important for us to identify the right owner, make sure that they're being served in the highest capacity. They're getting all the resource, getting all the value out of our platform. Right. And so, and I've been in the 600 franchise scenario as well. And there were people I did not know. And that was kind of weird. It was kind of weird. Somebody call and then be like, oh, hey, how are you? And I have to look up and I'm like, oh, they're in Sparta, North Carolina. And we've never met, So there's, I think a lot of it goes with your identity. It's like, hey, like what makes you come alive the most? And do that in terms of your growth strategy, and don't compare yourself to others. I think there's a lot of that happens just in the business world,
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's what happens. When you get into bigger systems, you have to scale the business larger, just like somebody that owns a very large company. They're not going to be able to personally know every single employee.
Exactly.
So, and that's not always their job. And,
correct.
It's scaling at different levels. That's what it is. It's happened to my dad, for example, now. We're a privately held family owned business. And so we run everything ourselves. We've always done it that way. My older brother, AJ, is the president of Sinorama. My younger brother, Andrew's the president of Fully Promoted.
Oh, really?
I've got 3 cousins in the business. And so if you ask my dad himself, he wouldn't know all of the franchisees under all the brands. He couldn't.
Yeah.
But
he couldn't.
I think most people would be surprised at how many he does know. And if you took a combination of me, my brothers, and my dad, I promise you we'd probably know in the high 90s% of them.
Right.
Because of the way we've built and grown the business through meeting franchisees and being a family over the years. And there's a lot of people that my dad still talks to on a regular basis that, he maybe had put in business, 25 years ago and stuff like that. And so it's pretty cool when I see those scenarios pop up.
Oh, I've been in the franchise industry for 15 years now. And I got a text from, actually, I think he was my number 2 franchisee, number 1, number 2 out of the 600 offices today. I have not served him in 8 years.
Yeah.
But those relationships, it's different than like a coworker relationship. Like you're not business partners, but you're as close to business partners as you can get. And you are partners in the spirit of the word. And so when you basically get in the trenches together, like you're dependent upon each other. And to me, like that's probably one of the coolest things is those relationships that you get to build with your franchisees that will transcend business, transcend it. Like, I know that we will have a relationship until one of us goes into the earth. And that's pretty cool, you know? So, yeah.
It is. When my dad first started it, we have, and I don't know, some people think this is crazy, but our franchise agreements are 30 years.
Okay.
For most of our brands, and they're different, you know, like for Network Lead Exchange, it's not 30 years, it's 10 years. But like for Signorama, it's like 30, 35 years. And we've had it that way. And, you know, recently the names that are coming across as renewals, you know, you have to renew after
30 years later.
and you got my dad and my brother, like my dad's like, I never thought this day would come, but we're getting renewals from Signorama, you know, and it's crazy. And he's like, the agreement is so different right now than it was then. And so we're going through all this stuff, and it's pretty interesting. And so obviously I won't get into details, but it's like, it's crazy that you see that. And what I was getting at is the relationships that, you know, he has with those people. A lot of them have already kind of passed the business on to their kids, or, you know, they're kind of trying to pass the business on to their kids, or they want to sell, or, you know, it's really, really cool thing.
That is cool. You might be one of the few rare birds out there that, you know, your organization that says, yeah, we've renewed franchises that were at 30-year terms. And I mean, it means you've had to be in business at least 30 years, which most businesses don't make it that long. And then secondly, as a franchisor, that you were of good service to those people for 3 decades where they re-upped.
Yeah.
Like
that's crazy.
That's huge. It's huge.
It is.
It's huge.
Yeah.
All right, man. Last question. If people want to learn more about you, get into your ecosystem, what is the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, the best way for them to do that is if you want to connect with me, you can go on LinkedIn and find me, Austin Titus, not very hard to find. If you want to connect with our company, go to unitedfranchisegroup.com.
Okay.
And you can see kind of everything that we've got. You can get to StarPoint Brands from there. You can get to our other sites from there. You know, and I'm happy to connect with anybody. You know, email me. You can, you know, email me austentitus@ufgcorp.com. Connect with me on LinkedIn though. That's where I prefer.
Where you're hanging out a lot. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for taking time to visit with us today. I mean, I really, you know, you and I visited yesterday. I enjoyed our conversation. I was really looking forward to it. Now that we've got this recording done, I know that there's pearls of wisdom here. They're going to help people. And so thank you very, very much.
Absolutely. I appreciate it.
Ladies and gentlemen, this episode was full of gold. And I know that you're thinking about one person that you want to share it with. And do me one favor, just go ahead and text them a link to this right now. It's super, super simple. Unless you're driving, I don't want you to do that. I just have one other ask. If you like what we're doing at Franchise My Business, please hit subscribe on your platform of choice. And until next time, I'm your host, Kevin Oldham, and I hope that you have a phenomenal week.